What if everything the world believed about the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage was only half the story? What if beneath the carefully managed royal narrative, beneath the palace press releases and the choreographed public appearances, there existed a deeper, more calculated betrayal, one that has taken decades to fully surface? Richard Godfrey, a man who spent years close to the inner circles of royal life, has recently made revelations that are sending shockwaves far beyond Buckingham Palace. The world is listening, and what it is hearing is nothing short of extraordinary. To understand the magnitude of what is now being revealed, we must travel back to the beginning, not the fairy tale beginning that was sold to 750 million television viewers on that radiant July morning in 1981, but the real beginning, the one that unfolded behind closed doors, away from the cameras, in the hushed corridors of aristocratic England where decisions about people's lives were made like moves on a chessboard. Lady Diana Spencer was barely out of childhood when she first crossed paths with Prince Charles. She was 16 years old, luminous and warm, full of an emotional intelligence that was rare and almost entirely unappreciated by the institution she was about to enter. Charles was 29, already shaped by decades of royal conditioning, already emotionally entangled with a woman named Camilla Parker Bowles, and already carrying the enormous weight of dynastic expectation on his shoulders. The palace needed an heir. The palace needed a bride. And Diana, young and impressionable and deeply in love with the idea of love itself, walked straight into a role that had been prepared for someone else entirely. Those closest to the situation have long whispered about the nature of Charles's feelings during the courtship. He described Diana in those early days as jolly and amusing, words one might use to describe a pleasant afternoon rather than the woman one intends to marry. There was admiration, certainly. There was perhaps even genuine fondness. But love, the consuming and unconditional kind that Diana craved and deserved, was never truly part of the equation on his side. And this is where the first layer of the betrayal begins, not with a dramatic act, but with the silence. Charles allowed Diana to believe she was entering a genuine partnership when the emotional architecture of their relationship had already been spoken for. Richard Godfrey's revelations pierced through this silence with uncomfortable precision. According to sources connected to Godfrey, the Prince of Wales never truly severed his emotional bond with Camilla Parker Bowles before proceeding with his engagement to Diana. This was not merely a matter of lingering feelings that faded over time. This was an active, ongoing emotional allegiance that Charles maintained even as he slipped a sapphire and diamond ring onto Diana's finger. The engagement was not the beginning of something new. It was a continuation of something old, dressed up in royal pageantry for the benefit of a watching world. Diana herself sensed this from almost the very beginning. She later confessed to her biographer Andrew Morton that she had discovered a bracelet, gold, engraved with the initials G and F, standing for Gladys and Fred, the private nicknames Charles and Camilla used for each other. This bracelet was being prepared as a gift, not for Diana, for Camilla. The timing was devastating. It was just days before the royal wedding, and Charles was commissioning a piece of jewelry for another woman. Diana confronted her sisters with her suspicions. They told her it was too late to turn back. Her face was already on the tea towels. She walked up the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral, carrying not only her breathtaking 25-foot train, but also the knowledge that her husband's heart was already pledged elsewhere. What Godfrey's account adds to this already painful history is the revelation of just how organized and deliberate the concealment was. This was not the messy emotional stumbling of a man torn between two loves. According to those familiar with Godfrey's findings, there existed what can only be described as a structured deception, with Charles's inner circle actively working to manage Diana's perception of her own marriage. Information was withheld from her. Her concerns were dismissed. When she raised alarms about Camilla's persistent presence in Charles's life, she was treated as hysterical, oversensitive, unstable. The palace machinery, rather than offering her support, instead pathologized her entirely legitimate distress. This gaslighting had devastating consequences for Diana's mental and emotional health. She developed bulimia nervosa, a condition she later described as a symptom of the profound unhappiness and helplessness she felt trapped inside the royal system. She experienced episodes of self-harm, She spiraled into periods of deep despair. And each time she reached out for help, for genuine understanding from the man she had married, she was met with emotional withdrawal. Charles, by multiple accounts from those who knew the couple well, did not possess the emotional language to meet Diana where she was. But more troubling than his inability was his apparent unwillingness to try. He retreated further into Camilla's company, and Diana was left to navigate the most suffocating loneliness imaginable, the loneliness of a woman surrounded by grandeur and utterly abandoned within it. The birth of their sons offered brief moments of genuine connection. When Prince William arrived in June of 1982, Charles was present at the birth, an unusual choice for a royal father at the time, and he wrote with evident sincerity about the astonishing experience of witnessing new life enter the world. There was something real between them in those moments. Even Diana acknowledged it, but the tenderness never lasted. By the time Prince Harry was born in September of 1984, Diana would later reveal that something had already begun to collapse. Charles's reaction to Harry's birth, reportedly disappointed that the child was a boy and visibly startled by his red hair, was a wound Diana never fully recovered from. She described a feeling of something inside her closing off in that moment, a door shutting quietly but permanently. By 1986, the marriage had deteriorated into something barely recognizable as a partnership. Charles had resumed what those around him understood to be a full emotional and romantic relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana, isolated and desperate for connection, found comfort in friendships that the palace viewed with deep suspicion and hostility. The institution that had absorbed her youth was now turning on her with quiet but unmistakable force. She was managed rather than supported, contained rather than heard. What makes Godfrey's account so significant is the specific nature of what he describes as the secret betrayal at the heart of this collapse. It was not simply that Charles loved Camilla more than Diana. Painful as that truth was, it was perhaps understandable in purely human terms. The deeper betrayal, the one that Godfrey's revelations illuminate with stark clarity, was that Diana was never given an honest foundation on which to make her own choices. She was not told the full truth about the state of Charles's relationship with Camilla before she accepted his proposal. She was not supported when she tried to address what was happening within the marriage, and she was not protected by the institution that had recruited her precisely because of her appeal to the public and her suitability as a vessel for the continuation of the royal line. She was used, and then, when she began to speak her own truth, first through Morton's biography, then through her seismic panorama interview with Martin Bashir in 1995, she was treated as a threat to be neutralized rather than a human being with legitimate grievances. Her famous observation during that interview, that there were 3 people in the marriage, so it was a bit crowded, was not just a wry remark. It was a precise and accurate description of the architecture of her entire marriage, spoken by a woman who had finally stopped pretending otherwise. The Panorama interview broke something open in the public conversation around the royal family. Diana's willingness to discuss her own imperfections alongside Charles's betrayal, her admission of her own struggles, her own moments of desperation, made her revelations impossible to dismiss as simple bitterness. She was not performing victimhood. She was offering testimony, and the response from the palace was swift and revealing. Queen Elizabeth II herself intervened, penning a letter to Diana requesting an early divorce in the interests of the country. The monarchy wanted the story to end. Diana was becoming too powerful a narrator of it. The divorce was finalized in August 1996. Diana received her decree absolute while preparing for an engagement at the English National Ballet, and met the news with a spirit that left those around her quietly in awe. She called it the beginning of a new chapter. She meant it. In the months that followed, something remarkable happened in the dynamic between Diana and Charles. With the legal battle concluded and the pressure of the marriage itself removed, a strange and tentative warmth began to emerge between them. Diana reportedly expressed to those close to her a genuine wish to become Charles's friend, to understand and be understood by the man she had once loved so completely and so unwisely trusted. That possibility was erased forever on August 31st, 1997, in a tunnel in Paris. Diana was 36 years old. The world that mourned her was not mourning a royal symbol. It was mourning a woman, real, flawed, luminous, and betrayed, who had simply wanted to be loved honestly. At her funeral, Charles made one final quiet gesture. He chose to wear navy rather than the traditional funeral black. It was, those who knew them well understood, because navy was the color Diana had always preferred to see him wear. In the end, in grief if not in marriage, he honored her preference. It was a small thing. It was too late, but it was real. Richard Godfrey's revelations do not rewrite history. They complete it. They fill in the spaces that official accounts left deliberately blank, and they ask the question that has always lurked beneath the surface of this story. What might Diana's life have looked like if she had been told the truth from the very beginning? What might she have chosen? Who might she have become? If the institution built on tradition and duty had found within itself the basic human decency to be honest with a 19-year-old girl standing on the threshold of her life, we will never know. And that, perhaps, is the greatest betrayal of all.